Hayato is an overpowered Giga-Chad who tries to hide his god theories but ends up clapping everyone in school regardless. When he was a kid, he was caught up in a savage attack with his childhood friend. However, he was powerless to protect her, and she ended up getting sliced open and infected with a virus. He tried to suck the poison out, but that was the last thing he remembered before he passed out. Now, after scoring the highest 100 compatibility score in history, he was sent to a prestigious academy to learn how to fight the savages. When he arrives, he's surprised to see 2 of the students waiting for him, but he's not a fan of the celebrity treatment and sneaks away on his own. At the school, he asks if he's in the right place, but he immediately gets recognized and a mob of excited fans form around him. Naturally, he uses the chaos to crawl to safety, and just as he breathes a sigh of relief, another crazed fan runs up to him and hugs him like he's the last good MCU movie left. The boy introduces himself as Emil, a fellow new student, and they head inside. Later, they attend the entrance ceremony hosted by second years, Erica and Liddy, and they welcome the president for her address. Claire walks onto the stage in all her pigtail glory, but before she can start her address, 2 girls walk in and apologize for being late. Hayato recognizes them as the girls he ditched at the airport, but when the girls try to explain, Liddy points out that Hayato has been there the entire time. Claire decides to expel the girls for breaking the rules, so Emil speaks up and calls it unfair, pointing out that she's abusing her powers. Hayato reluctantly backs her up, which catches Claire's attention. She tells the entire assembly that so-called little mistakes could lead to instant death on the battlefield, and it's important to follow orders. However, Emil continues to counter her points, so he ends up getting expelled along with the other 2. While Hayato tries to stop him from making it worse, Claire asks him if he has any objection to their expulsion. He hesitates at first, but finally finds the nerve to object and explain why the girls were late, asking her to be lenient instead. After hearing this, Claire challenges him to duel, and if he wins, she'll reverse their expulsion.
What?
Hayato tries to object, but his Lutma friend accepts the challenge and assures Hayato he can beat her. Afterward, Hayato laments having to face off against the strongest person in the school, but Emil seems too confident that he can win. They go to see Charlotte, the lead researcher on the 100, along with her assistant Medi, who has a thing for sniffing. Charlotte says she's surprised that a new student would be dumb enough to duel with Claire, but Emil asks how she knows that already. Charlotte tells them about Liza, the autonomous computer that controls the entire school and is smart enough to communicate by itself. After, Charlotte hands him his 100 and explains that they're the only things that work against savages and can take different forms depending on the user. She then shows him Claire's form, which is a dragoon type with floating cannons, and tells him that regardless of the form, the point is to protect humanity. After he accepts his 100, he and Emil head to a practice room and change into their battle suits. Emil suddenly gets embarrassed at Hayato staring at him, but Hayato wonders what the big deal is since they're both boys. After he explains how to activate the 100 and steps away, so Hayato activates it for the very first time and his form turns out to be a Chevalier type. Emil gets excited to see his form and brings out his 100 to do the same. Hayato is surprised he already has 100, but Emil simply brushes it off by saying some stuff happened. He activates his and brings out floating cannons like Claire's but calls him an innocence type. Before Hayato can ask any questions, Emil tells him they're having a trial by fire and blasts his cannons right at him. Hayato stretches out his hand in shock and ends up activating an energy barrier that protects him. He tries to scold Emil for attacking him out of the blue, but Emil reminds him that Claire won't take it easy on him and blasts at him again. This time, Hayato moves out of the way at lightning speed, but ends up crashing into the wall because he can't control his powers. Emil praises his skills and assures him he can win, especially since he has a plan. Then he powers up his cannon and says he's going to ride him hard. After Emil tells him he's ready, but Hayato's not so sure about that. He suddenly notices several messages from his sister and realizes he forgot to head to the hospital after the ceremony. Emil asks about his sister, so he explains that he only agreed to attend Little Garden on the condition that she receive the best medical care. He promises to meet up with him later and rushes off. At the hospital, his sister gives him the cold shoulder for being late, so she gestures for him to give her a kiss, which he does. She forgives him and asks how the entrance ceremony was, but before he can tell her all the crazy details, Nurse Bubbleplots comes in and tells him visiting hours are over. Later, Hayato returns to his dorm, but is surprised to find Emil in his room without any clothes on. Emil gets embarrassed and throws any weapon he can find at Hayato, one of which causes him to pass out. When he comes to, he finds himself in Emil's lap and panics, causing them to butt heads. Hayato is beginning to think there's something sus about this guy, but Emil changes the subject and says they're actually roommates. He then offers to help repair his uniform, but while he sews, he pricks his finger, causing Hayato to grab it and suck on it. After he plasters it up and explains that after the savage attack he survived some years ago, he can't stand to see someone get hurt without doing something. The next day, Hayato and Claire finally meet for their match, while the whole school watches. They both activate their hundreds, and she tells him to show her what he's got. Liddy explains the rules and says the match will end once one of them gets knocked out or disarmed, so Claire throws in a bonus and says she won't use her full body armament. Hayato's clueless about what that means, so she explains it's pretty much the hundred's ultimate form, and would end the match in seconds, which wouldn't be fun for the audience. Emil radios in and tells him that he'll support him during the match, and though Erika says that's cheating, Claire says she'll allow it since he's a new student. The match begins and Hayato uses his super speed to rush toward Claire. However, the dumb doesn't know what he's doing and ends up groping her fun bags instead. She demands to know what he thinks he's doing, but he takes 1 second more before he lets go and tries to explain himself. He asks for forgiveness, but she refuses since no one has touched her chest before and he had the audacity to squeeze. She fires her cannons, and he tries to dodge, but she uses the opening to rush to him, deliver a gut punch, and kick him away. Just before her next blast, Emil tells him to put up his energy barrier, and that shields him from the attack. Then Emil begins to scold him for grabbing Claire's melons, but Hayato struggles to understand why he's mad about that. Emil's forced to get over it and focus on the match, encouraging Hayato to keep attacking. Immediately, Hayato rushes forward to do something cool, but Claire stops his blade with one hand and asks if that's all he's got. Emil tells him to use his other move, so he concentrates and his sword starts to glow. Then he leaps in the air and sends an energy ball toward her. However, when the dust settles, he sees her cannons have formed a shield and she's unharmed. She praises him for a decent attempt, but powers up her finishing move. She blasts him right out of the sky, and though that's gotta hurt, he refuses to give up. Claire applauds him for having spirit, so she summons her Buster Cannon to respond in kind, and just before she blasts him to next week, he feels something awaken in his body. Emil tries to call out to him, but he can't get through, and just as Claire blasts her cannon, his eyes change color and he moves with hyper speed to attack her. She narrowly manages to escape, and the audience is surprised to see Claire being pushed back for once. However, she gets him in close range to her cannon, and it looks like the end, till she sees that he's activated his full body armament. Everyone's shocked since it's only been 2 days, but Hayato doesn't give Claire any breathing space and hits her where the sun don't shine. She manages to stick the landing, but Hayato is about to strike it again, making her desperate enough to activate her full body armament. This doesn't slow the bloodthirsty lunatic down, and he tries to attack, but she sends several projectiles his way which manage to pierce through his protective barrier. After, she powers up an even larger cannon and sends a massive blast right at him, which can be seen outside the auditorium. The attack was just too much for Hayato, and he falls to the ground completely defeated. Emil hurries to make sure he's okay, and after confirming he's alive, he gives Claire shit about going back on her word. At that moment, Charlotte walks up and says according to the official rules of the duel, Claire won the match, but Claire won't accept the win because she believes she lost to herself. Charlotte then suggests they call it a tie, so Claire agrees and walks off. Later, Hayato wakes up to see Claire standing over him and assumes he must have lost the match. He asks about the expulsion order, and Claire says she called it off, which surprises him. Claire then begins to grill him on who he is, since it should be impossible for a newbie to corner her. Hayato insists that he doesn't know anything, just as Emil walks in and demands to know what she's trying to do. Thanks to his interruption, she says she was just apologizing and leaves the room. The next day, Emil suggests they head to the business district together, since they have the day off, and when Hayato agrees, he's excited that they finally get to go on a date together. Later, they walk around the district, but the people can't stop staring at him since they all watched his match with Claire. Emil tries to distract him by getting him to taste out of his cream. While the other students gossip about how close those two seem, Emil says there's one more place he wants to stop by, so Hayato goes along with it. But it turns out to be a romantic spot for couples, making Hayato start to notice the glaring red flags. Just then, his sister calls and tells him that she did a reading for him and saw an ominous shadow of a woman, so she asks if he's with one. He insists that he's not, so she decides to see for herself and comes all the way to see him. There, she asks Emil if he's really a guy, and when he insists that he is, she asks him if he by any chance likes other men. Emil denies the allegations, and Karen accepts his answers for now, but warns him not to try anything with her brother. The group stumbles on a broadcast of the pop star, Sakura, and Karen says she would love to attend one of her concerts sometime, so Hayato promises to make it happen. After, they go off to eat. But while they're there, Claire walks up with Erika and Liddy, and Karen asks if the one with the ugly hair was responsible for giving him a hard time. Claire wonders who the rude vegetable is, so her assistant, Chris, tells her that Karen's his sister. Claire gets to the point and says she wants him to join a special group under the student council called Selections, which allows him to go on missions like a full-fledged slayer. After hearing this, Emil insists on joining alongside him, but Liddy says he doesn't meet the requirements and would likely drag everyone down. In response, Emil challenges her to a duel to test his abilities, and without waiting for an answer, he activates his 100 and Claire is shocked to see a Dragoon type. Liddy intends to put him in his place and activates her 100 too. Hayato tells Emil to cut it out since Karen's here, so he changes the form of his armament to match Liddy's, which shocks Claire once again. Liddy and Emil begin to fight and Erica tries to stop it, but Claire tells her to let it play out. The two continue to go at it, with Emil changing his form several times, but before they can get serious, an alarm goes off and the girls have to go. Hayato asks what's going on, and Claire says the savages have appeared on Zwei Islands, so she'll collect his answer once they return. However, Charlotte shows up and tells Claire to take the boys along. The group rushes to the headquarters to find out more about the attack. They discover that one of the savages is a Trenta class, which makes Claire decide it's too dangerous to take the boys with them. She plans to hold out for more experienced reinforcements instead and tells the girls to move out. Hayato stops her and asks to go along regardless, explaining that waiting for the support team might cost people their lives. Charlotte adds that it was actually Liza that recommended they go along to reduce casualties and increase the chance of success. Since a supercomputer can't possibly be wrong, Claire agrees to let them help. On the plane to the island, Erica explains the battle plan, which only allows Hayato and Emil to take on a standard class savage. When they ask about the Trenta class, Claire tells them to put some respect on their name and leave it to them to handle. The mission begins and Erica jumps out first, taking out the savage's vision. Then the girls activate their hundreds and Erica wraps the savage in chains. After, Claire uses her cannon to aim for its head where its core is located and manages to break through its tough skin and leave the core exposed. Then, Liddy goes in with her spear and drills into the core till it breaks apart and they finally take it down. Claire radios the boys and instructs them on what to do once they land, but Emil says they can't wait for the plane to land and pushes Hayato out with them. Then they both deploy their hundreds. While they fall, Emil suggests they copy the girls' tactics, so he fires his cannons to provide a smokescreen for Hayato to attack the core. But when he tries, he finds it's too hard to break through. Before the savage can attack, Emil cuts off its arm, giving Hayato another chance to break through its skin, but he still can't break through to the core. Luckily, Emil steps in and fires an arrow at its head that manages to take out the core in one shot. Meanwhile, the girls take on the Trent class using the same tactic, but this time, Erica's chains aren't strong enough to hold it, and while Liddy goes for the head, it swats her aside like an annoying bug, while it smashes Erica into the ground. With two of the girls down, Hayato says they should go help them, but Claire tells them to stand down and insists they can handle it. She deploys her full-body armament and powers up her cannon, but the savage powers up a blast from its mouth that matches hers and cancels it out. She tries to release another one, but she realizes she doesn't have enough energy due to the duel with Hayato. The savage, on the other hand, releases another blast that would have vaporized Claire if Hayato hadn't come to her rescue and carried her to safety. However, his heroic act is overshadowed by the convenient placement of his hand on her side plot. She gets embarrassed and complains about him constantly stealing her firsts, since this is the first time she's been carried like a princess. The two are jerked back to reality when they see the savage powering up another blast to fry them. But Erica says they can't afford to dodge or the airport full of people will get hit instead. Claire tells Hayato to put up a barrier and take the blast head-on. So they join their energies and manage to push the blast off in two separate directions. Hayato drops Claire, but she stumbles due to all the energy she's used and he holds her up. Emil interrupts their moment like a screeching third wheel while he goes off to face the Trenta class alone and fails to pierce through its head. When he sees debris falling toward Liddy, he stands in front of her to guard her, but eventually gets overwhelmed by the savage's next attack, which rips her suit right open. As Hayato stares at her plot pebbles, they trigger parts of his past, and he realizes she is the girl from his memory. As the savage is about to attack again, he calls out for Emilia and manages to stop its arm in time. She's surprised he finally remembers her full name, but he tells her she needs to run for it and take Liddy with her. She goes to Liddy, but Hayato gets pushed aside, leaving the girls defenseless. The Trent class tries to attack again, and this causes Hayato's eyes to change and he cuts its arm away, revealing his full-body armament again. While he defends the girls, the teeth grinding makes it clear that he's gone apeshit, so Emilia tries to call out to him, but she doesn't get through. He goes berserk and starts attacking the savage relentlessly till he gets tossed aside. Next, he recklessly fires off an energy ball, which bounces off the savage toward Erica, but thankfully, Claire gets there in time to save her. Claire wonders what has gotten into the raging lunatic, and as he powers up yet another energy ball, Emilia realizes she has no choice and kisses him. This brings him back and she says she'll explain later, but they have a savage to finish off first. The savage powers up another attack, but with Emilia's instruction, Hayato is able to channel all his energy to his sword and slice through the attack and the savage itself, ending the fight. After he powers down and Emilia goes to hug him, but Claire calls their attention to point out the whole surprise melons and kissing situation, and Amelia admits that the jig is up. Afterward, they hop on the plane back and see the thank you sign from the citizens, which makes it all worth it. Later, Amelia tells him that Claire has allowed her to continue pretending to be a guy, but she has to move out of his room for obvious reasons. Hayato asks her to tell him what she knows about everything, so she tells him that she's a variant because she was infected by the savage virus when it attacked her as a kid. However, since he tried to suck the poison out, he also got infected, which is why his 100 score went up dramatically. There aren't up to 10 of them in the world, so she had Charlotte search for him using his test scores so she could attend the same school as him. Hayato asks about the berserk episodes, and she explains that when he's in danger, the virus activates and he loses himself in a rampage, but it's possible to learn to control it like she has. She offers to get him some tea, but when she walks past him, he loses control of his body and falls right onto her golf balls. Amelia figures the virus must be at it again and kisses him, explaining that only an inactive virus can suppress an active one. When she sees the look on his face, she asks if he doesn't like kissing her, and he kind of awkwardly mumbles. Then they start to lean in for round 2 till Claire walks in and finds them in this sus position. Hayato stands up to explain but trips over Amelia and lands in his first kiss with Claire. Hayato immediately apologizes as she loses another one of her firsts, but when she doesn't try to rip his soul from his body, Amelia points out that she's being suspiciously nice. The girls begin to bicker over the matter, while all the guys poke their heads out and wonder what on earth is going on. Weeks later, Sakura's agent calls Little Garden to request a specific bodyguard since her concert had been rescheduled due to the Zwei Islands incident. Meanwhile, Risha and Fritz spar with Hayato and Amelia till they eventually eat dust. Then Alilia commends Hayato on being able to control his variant well now. Risha feels bad that they're not strong enough to get into selections, but Amelia assures them that it takes a lot to force Hayato into his full-body armament, which means they just might have the stuff. At that moment, Erika informs Hayato that he's got a selections mission, so he goes to meet with Claire, who tells him Sakura has requested him as her bodyguard, but they don't know why she asked for him specifically. Thanks to the recent savage incident, all the VIPs have to be protected. Erika mentions that last month they detected 7 savages, but they only battled 3. 4 were said to be shot down, yet they only found the remains of 1 savage, which means the other 3 could be lurking somewhere. Hayato accepts the mission, so he asks for tickets to Sakura's concert, which he tells Karen about when he visits her in the hospital. While he's there, she tells him about his fortune reading and warns him to be careful around women and water. The next morning, Hayato wakes up to find Amelia waiting in his bed. She figured they could go on a date since his morning is free, but he breaks the news that the mission starts off that morning. She's disappointed but understands and wishes him luck. Later, he sets out on his mission, and Liddy warns him to keep alert. Then, Sakura appears from a plane and they officially exchange introductions. Due to her status, there's a crowd of crazed teens swarming the airport as they escort Sakura through. On the way to the hotel, Sakura tries to make small talk, but discovers that he's never heard her music, but she says it's fine and even tells him to drop the honorifics and call her Sakura. When they arrive at the hotel room, Sakura has to tell him how to do his job, which surprises her, so he apologizes and confesses that it's his first time. They enter the room, and once she's sure they're alone, she suggests they get married. When he makes a surprised Pikachu face, she shows him the footage of him destroying the savage on his last mission, and tells him that she got interested in him after watching that. She continues to propose they go out, saying the diva of the world and the genius slayer would make serious headlines.
Yeah, boy.
She goes off about the details of their wedding and how many kids they'll have, and Hayato realizes he has to do something to stop the madness. He takes a deep breath and accepts her proposal, showing her he can match her crazy. He even goes one step forward and corners her, suggesting that they seal the deal with a kiss, but she cracks under the pressure and leaves to go take a bath. While she soaks off, she calls out to Hayato to pass her phone so she can record a song, but when he enters the bathroom, he sees the mess and decides to tidy up. Sakura comes out of the shower just in time to see him holding her panties, so she panics and tries to reach for her phone quickly, but slips on a cultured piece of soap and falls. Hayato rushes to help but instead helps his eyes to a view of her plots. When he gets out of there, he wonders if that was what Karen meant by women in water, but Sakura interrupts his thoughts to show him her outfit for the day. They head to all her celebrity outings, and he's impressed by how professional she is. Once they're done, she suggests they take a little detour, so they head to the setup for the next concert. There she shows him that the stage is her battlefield, and she activates her 100 and starts flying around. Charlotte suddenly shows up like heat rash and says they were called to help since Sakura plans to use her 100 to create illusions for the concert. After Sakura's done impersonating Tinkerbell, she flies into Hayato's arms and asks him what he thinks. He praises her skills, which is just what she wants to hear since she's getting ready for her fans. Afterward, Hayato heads back to the dorms and informs Claire that he won't need to report for the mission until the next afternoon since Sakura needs time to write a song. Upon hearing this, Claire invites him to her summer home to discuss something important the next morning and accidentally lets it slip that she can't wait. When he returns to the dorms, it appears no one's around, so he uses the opportunity to take a private bath, but is surprised to find Amelia inside alone. He tries to give her privacy, but she calls him back and asks if he'd like to get in with her.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Of course, he gets in, and they sit back to back, and she asks him how his mission went. When he calls Sakura's name, she gets jealous and tells him to call her by her real name, too, instead of her cover name. He calls her name, so she stands up and tells him to take a look at her scar, which seems to be fading away because she saw him again. But when he keeps staring, she gets embarrassed and tells him to look away. Hayato then asks if she'd like to go with him to Zwei Island the next day since he'll be free after visiting the president till afternoon. This makes Amelia happy and she jumps on him to hug him, but somehow ends up with her tennis balls planted in his hands. Meanwhile, a group of variants, called Kroven, Nakri, and Nesset watch from afar after taking down one of the savages, hoping to carry out their mission after the concert. The next morning, Hayato arrives at Claire's summer home and finds her relaxing in her swimsuit as Erica rubs her with lube. He gets flustered by the sight, so Claire tries to tease him some more and give him the full view, but her bikini top falls off, and she gives him the full jiggle package instead.
Nice.
Lydia emerges from the pool to knock the memories of Claire out of him, but she slips on some water and lands with her floodgates on his face. After, Claire tells him the report from HQ about a variable stone that was stolen at the concert site last month. The stone is a valuable ore that Sakura was planning to use during the concert, and it's possible the thieves might return for more. Claire tells him he needs to keep his eyes open and guard Sakura, and he accepts his mission. Then she shifts gears and challenges him to a swimming competition, saying she's already arranged a swimsuit for him. However, when Hayato sees the red Speedo, he disappears, leaving Claire pissed off. Later, he meets up with Amelia, who's dressed as a girl for a change. Hayato worries about their classmates seeing her, but she assures him they're far away from Little Garden and don't need to worry. After, she drags him along to go shopping, and when he's done changing, he spots her looking over some jewelry. He offers to get one for her, which excites her, so she picks one and says the pendant officially makes her his. He quickly changes the subject and says they should get going, but when he turns, he spots Fritz and Riesha, which means she needs to hide. They end up in a changing booth together, and Hayato can't believe their luck, but Amelia confesses that it was Fritz who told her about this place. Hayato suggests they find a way to sneak out, but Amelia doesn't mind letting him get a closer view of her plot pebbles. When they eventually escape, Amelia offers to get them some drinks while Hayato waits by the fountain. But just as she leaves, he gets an emergency call. Claire tells him Sakura has disappeared from her room and turned off the GPS, so they're currently searching for her. As Claire stands up, she reveals the evidence that she's been stalking Hayato and gives him a hard time about going shopping while she slades away working. He apologizes, but she tells him to make it up to her by going shopping with her next time, to which he surprisingly agrees. After, he wonders where that nutcase singer could be, and she appears right beside him in disguise, since stalking bodyguards is apparently a client perk. She says she wants to take him somewhere and insists they don't have much time, but when he's reluctant to go, she starts to grill him on what better thing he has to do. Hayato is at least smart enough to not let Sakura and Amelia meet, so he decides to ditch Amelia and go with her as long as she contacts her assistant. Later, Amelia returns with the drinks only to find that she's been ditched with only a measly text as an explanation. Hayato figures he won't hear the end of it, while Sakura tells her assistant not to worry and hands him the phone to vouch for her. Back at the student council, Claire's informed that Sakura has been found and is with Hayato, which pisses her off even more. Meanwhile, Sakura and Hayato arrive at the island's Grand Canyon, and she tells him that he's the hero that protected this view, which is precious to her and her mom. While they enjoy the view, Sakura starts humming a song, and Hayato says his sister used to hum the exact same song. Sakura says that shouldn't be possible since her mother created it for her and she never lets anyone hear it. However, she asks what his sister's name is, and when he mentions it, she realizes that they've met before after the savage attack years ago. He starts to remember, so she tells him how he and his sister used to enjoy her singing, and just before they left, he told her that her singing made him feel better. She tells him that his words changed her life and gave her the confidence she needed to become a singer. After that, her father came to get her, but when she got home, she became sick with an unknown virus, which is the same thing that happened to Karen. She ended up losing her voice, so her father sold her off to a research facility. There they were injected with a vaccine made from savage fluids under orders from the director named Vedali. Though many children died because it was too potent, Sakura managed to survive and regain her voice. However, they continued to inject the children with the vaccine, hoping to artificially create slayers. But even after they were successful, They continued to inject the vaccines, which would cause violent outbursts. Sakura would sing to them and calm everyone down, but none of them made a complete recovery. Somehow Sakura survived and was rescued, but she was already a slayer, though she couldn't actually fight. Hayato is surprised that she's a variant, but when she wonders how he knows about variants, he reveals that he's one too. Hayato thinks it must be a miracle that he changed her life, saved the islands, and shares the same fate as her. She gets inspired to write more songs and says they need to hurry back. They take a bus back, and Hayato falls asleep, while Sakura realizes there's something she has to tell him. However, before she can, the bus crashes and a savage appears and fires at them. The people get out and hide while Hayato takes the savage on solo. At the same time, Claire gets word of the attack, and Chris informs her they've requested assistance from slayers nearby. But Hayato is on his own till then. Back at the fight, Hayato realizes he doesn't have as much mobility without his battle suit, but when the savage powers up another attack, Sakura runs forward to help and tells him to focus on offense while she defends. Hayato is grateful that this Sakura isn't the useless kind and powers up his sword to attack. He jumps up and aims for the core, and after putting his back into it, he manages to take it down. Sakura immediately hugs him and calls him her husband while he tries to get her off him so people don't get the wrong idea. However, all's not well just yet as another savage shows up and sends a blast that overpowers Sakura's defense. As the savage advances, Hayato freezes like a deer in headlights till Fritz shoots at it and Riisha punches the ground to destabilize it. Amelia also appears and takes out its arm. Then she happily calls out to Hayato till she sees him with Sakura and resumes being the jealous not girlfriend. The savage interrupts their soap opera, so Riisha kicks it back and gives Amelia an opening to take out its second arm, while Fritz shoots at its head, but only puts a dent in it. Riisha follows up with a powerful kick, but is unable to get all the way to the core. Amelia gets ready to finish it up, but the savage knocks her arrow away, and they realize it's a regenerator, which has the power to heal itself. Amelia gets ready to go again, and tells Fritz and Riisha to cover her. So they do their thing, and she takes out its arms, giving Hayato an opening to take out its core, but the savage swats him away immediately, regenerating much faster than before. The savage is about to blast them when Sakura yells for it to stop, and it actually responds to her. So Hayato uses the opportunity to attack, but is pushed back by Kroven. Kroven's surprised that Sakura was able to get through to the savage and finds it interesting. Nesset walks up to Hayato and copies his sword that she looks to the savage as it attacks, but Kroven splits its attack while Nikri stops the citizens from getting barbecued. Nesset takes the savage out with her sword copy and continues to stab it while its fluids leak out. Riisha tries to warn her to stop so she doesn't go crazy, but Nesset licks the fluid, causing Riisha to rush forward and try and stop her. She's stopped by Nakri, which angers Fritz, but before he can shoot, Nakri takes him out too. Amelia rushes in hot-headed as usual, but when Kroven tries to attack, Hayato stops his blade, which surprises him. Hayato then remembers Claire's info about the stolen variable stone and figures they're responsible. Amelia faces off against Nakri, who has her on the ropes, while Hayato manages to keep up with Kroven, even without his variable suit. However, Kroven activates his variant to finish the job, and Hayato is shocked to see this, but manages to block his attack. Amelia worries about him and ends up losing her sword, but she changes it into a cannon and blasts Nakri away. She tries to do the same to Kroven, but he easily blocks it with one arm and notes that he has similar abilities to Nestat. Amelia asks what exactly they're after, but Kroven says their work is finished as Nezet carries the savage cores with her. Kroven mentions making Vitali happy, and Sakura recognizes the name, but they all rush off before the rescue squad arrives. Later, they meet with Claire, who tells them they probably ran into hunters, which are slayers that don't follow any law. Chris then brings up footage of the last savage that was found with its core missing, which was most likely them too. Charlotte explains that the cores are very similar to variable stones, which means they can be reconfigured to function as 100. Claire asks them to keep this conversation top secret, but she's glad they're all safe. After, she scolds Amelia for dragging Fritz and Riisha, who haven't been approved, into a battle that could have cost them their lives. However, she commends their performance and says she'll consider their entry into selections. Meanwhile, Sakura prepares for her performance the next day, and when Sufil tells her she'll finally get to sing for her mom, she looks slightly sad. At the same time, Hayato visits Karen in the hospital, and she teaches him how to cheer properly at Sakura's concert. While he's there, he gets a message from Sakura, so he goes to meet her on the beach. There he tells her how excited Karen is for the concert, but Sakura laments that the only reason her songs affect people is because she's a variant. Apparently, many humans have been infected with the virus, so she can tap into it since she's a variant, meaning her singing is nothing but a deception. Hayato tells her that he doesn't think that's the case, but she starts to cry as she reminds him that even the savage reacted to her voice. However, he grabs her and reminds her that when they were kids he thought her song was great, and she was able to reach into his and Karen's hearts before becoming a variant. This touches Sakura, so she wipes her tears away and tells him she's going to fall even deeper in love with him. With that statement, Hayato can hear the milk store calling, but he relaxes when she changes the topic to tomorrow's concert. The next day, thousands of her fans show up, so she activates her 100 and gives them the performance of their lives, and Hayato and Karen enjoy the concert too. After the main act, she sings a song for the first time which Karen recognizes from the girl they met at the shelter. The crowd is completely mesmerized, and even the people streaming can't take their eyes off her, which makes the concert a success. Afterwards, Sakura is about to leave, so she signs an autograph for Karen and says they should sing together when next they meet, just like old times. She greets Hayato goodbye with a kiss, which shocks everyone, and then promises to come back for him really soon. As promised, the next morning, he wakes up to find Sakura on top of him, so he jumps away from her. Claire walks in and accuses her of illegal trespassing, but she cozies up to Hayato in rebellion. Amelia walks in and wonders why they're all there, so they all proceed to fight over the clueless fool. Some days later, they all head to the beach, and even Nurse Bubble Plots goes along for Karen's sake. Sakura gets up close and personal with Hayato, but Amelia complains, knowing there's only room for one flat chester in his heart. Unfortunately, she can't dress like a girl and has to sit this one out. Everyone else has a nice time and Sakura even packed lunch for them, but Amelia is disgusted by her presence and worse, that she joined Little Garden. Sakura fires back and accuses their dynamic of being almost as fishy as Naruto and Sasuke's, saying everyone in school is talking about them. After lunch, Richiya calls them for a volleyball game, and they hit the court, but Richiya almost takes out an eye with her powerful serve. Amelia decides to play dirty as well, and the match soon spirals out of hand. Meanwhile, Claire tries to relax on her own till Erica shows up suspiciously asking if she could rub some lube on her front side too. Lydia insists that she'll do it instead, and the two of them fight over who gets the pleasure of rubbing her some more. The volleyball match finally gets out of hand when Hayato chases after a rogue ball and lands between Claire's melons, which are larger than the ball. At that moment, a chopper lands on the beach, and Claire's older brother and CEO of Warslarn, Judar, emerges. He acts excited to see his sister, but she doesn't seem to buy it and asks why he's there. He claims he just wanted to see the brave soldiers for himself and focuses on Hayato, and commends him for being the little garden's rising star, then mumbles something about him having divine blood. After greeting everyone else, he tells Claire to come with him on the chopper, so she leads with him. Later, Hayato and Amelia get a text to meet at the student council room immediately. There, Claire tells them they'd be having an anti-savage operation alongside other organizations' task forces. Fritz and Richiya ask why they're there, and Claire officially announces them as members of selections, so they can participate in the operation. After the meeting, Judar spots Hayato and asks for a word, so Hayato goes along with him. They head down in an elevator, and Judar asks if he knows how Little Garden is powered, and Hayato says it's a nuclear fusion reactor. Judar reveals that it's just the cover story and the Academy needs even more than a nuclear reactor to function. As he unlocks several doors, he finally reveals what powers the Academy as Hayato sees a girl sleeping in a pod with wires hooked up to her. He explains that she's actually Lisa and is the first artificially created Slayer and variant, and also happens to be his and Claire's little sister. At that moment, Claire shows up behind them with a gun pointed at Judar as she asks why he brought Hayato there. He claims that Hayato will be one of the top Slayers, so he should know there's something that needs to be protected at all costs. Claire fires at him for calling their sister a thing, so he apologizes but says that Hayato also has divine blood and can wake Lisa up. Judar tells him to touch the capsule and release his energy, and though she begins to glow, nothing else happens. Judar says it wasn't enough, but he'll have to be on his way, mentioning that as long as Vitaly's alive, she may come after Lisa. On the way up, Claire tells him to keep what he's heard a secret and says she'll tell him more when it's time. Later, the group flies out, and Claire goes over the plan once more. She mentions that they may run into the hunters again, which is why they were chosen for the mission by Judar. When they arrive at the camp base, Richiya gets nervous to see such a large force, but Erica calls them to get going. Suddenly, an airhead comes running down calling Amelia a princess and saying she's missed her so much. Amelia covers her mouth to keep her from spilling the beans, then they step aside to have a normal conversation. She introduces herself as Claudia, Amelia's childhood friend, and begins to beg Amelia to return home, saying everyone misses the princess. Hayato wonders what this princess thing is all about, so Amelia confesses that she's been keeping a secret for 10 years and she's actually a princess of the royal family. She then refuses to go back with Claudia, who immediately throws a tantrum saying she loves her. Amelia shoves her off and holds on to Hayato, saying she loves him more than Claudia loves her. So this pisses off Claudia, who challenges him to duel where the winner gets Amelia. Hayato can't believe he's been dragged into yet another duel because of Amelia, but he sucks it up and agrees to it. Claudia says the first person to hit the other wins, but they can't use their hundreds or sense energy. Hayato agrees and takes his stance, and though Claudia mocks his weapon of choice, he tells her he'll be fine. The match begins and Claudia makes the first move, which Hayato dodges, and when she looks over to call Emilia's attention, Emilia is completely focused on him. This angers Claudia more so, she throws everything she's got at him, while calling him a cheap man whore. She then swings her chain super fast till it creates several whirlwinds which she sends at him. However, Hayato focuses on his sword work, and with perfect timing, he swings at her, cuts off her ball, and knocks it back at her. He tries to make sure she's okay, but Emilia runs to his side and hugs him while Claudia gets back up and demands for the best 2 out of 3. Emilia refuses to even entertain the nonsense, which makes Claudia swear revenge on Hayato and run off crying. Afterward, the two head into town to get some food, but some people walk past in hoods which turn out to be the hunters. The next day, they're all assigned to different squads and Claudia somehow ends up on theirs, so she promises to show Hayato how superior she is. Claire interrupts and tells her that despite her wanting to take Emilia home, she's actually an important asset to the academy, and they'll do whatever they can to keep her. She expects her to focus on the mission for now, so Claudia reluctantly agrees. After the helicopters are ready for takeoff, and it's finally time to start the mission. When they arrive, Claire immediately starts taking out savages by herself, so Emilia tells Hayato they can't let her hog the spotlight. However, Claudia deploys her hunter to show off her skills and takes down one herself, but she leaves the finishing blow to Emilia, who powers up and destroys the core. Claudia immediately jumps all over her, saying their teamwork is unmatched, and she's better than Hayato, while Claire gives up on lending that girl any good sense. Erica says she can't find any other savages around for now, so Claire says they're only getting started. Meanwhile, the hunters observe them from afar and gloat over having so much treasure waiting for them. Risha's squad also takes out some savages with their new allies, but the superiors comment that they're using too much energy and it won't last. Meanwhile, Claire's squad has set up camp and is eating dinner while Claudia continues to blabber about Hayato not landing any of the finishing blows. Hayato says he doesn't mind simply assisting, which impresses Emilia and further annoys Claudia. Erica tells Claudia that the reports are showing signs of rain, so Claudia says that shouldn't be a problem except for beam weapons. Later, Claudia suggests they split into 2 groups and take turns getting 4 hours of sleep, so Emil offers to stay up with Hayato while the rest of them sleep, but Claire claims that it's dangerous for them to be together. Claudia uses that as an opportunity to back her up and suggests that they team up instead. Claire's not amused and knows she can't let the 2 nuisances team up, so Emilia gets stuck with Erica instead, who diligently says they should get a fire going before the rain starts. Inside the tent, Hayato struggles to get any sleep and looks over to Claire, who tells him that getting sleep is also part of his mission, while Claudia listens unhappily. Much later, Erica reports that according to HQ, they've taken out 42 savages in total, which means there are more savages there than they thought. Claire says they need to be on extra alert, then Erica drags Emilia inside for their 4-hour rest. Later, Claire and Hayato bond under the starry night sky, and Hayato says his sister would have loved the view. Claire's impressed by how much he cares for her and says that she hopes they can make a world where everyone can relax and look up at the sky like them. At that moment, Claudia shows up and says the scene looks light. It's straight out of a romantic movie, which gets them all flustered. Then she gets serious and says she spotted a large shadow moving toward the lake, so she suggests they go check it out while she stays at the camp in case there's an emergency and she needs to warn the others. Claire agrees, but Claudia can't help herself and suggests they just go on a date if they don't find any savages, saying they can get as cozy as they want. Claire's face turns red as she pretends not to love the idea, but she calls for Hayato, and they leave to check things out. When they're gone, Claudia rejoices over plan working, saying she was right to think Claire had feelings for him, so setting them up would help to get Hayato out of the picture. Claire and Hayato actually spot a savage like Claudia said, but when she tries to radio in and inform her, she gets a transmission error and can't get through. She decides they can take care of it since it's just one of them, and rushes forward to attack. However, she slips in a puddle and drops her weapon, giving the savage an opening to attack. Luckily, Hayato comes to her rescue and slices its arms off, followed by one to the head that takes out the core immediately. After, Claire insists she didn't need his help, but thanks him anyway. Then she says she needs to wash off before heading back to camp. Back at camp, Emilia pokes her head out, claiming she can't sleep without talking to Hayato, but Claudia feigns concern and tells her that he and Claire went on a date to the lake. At that very same moment, Claire takes off her suit and gets in the water, which is pretty much a hot spring thanks to its geothermal properties. Back in camp, Emilia refuses to believe the report, but Claudia assures her it's true and tells him to dump the cheater and go back home. But Emilia insists that even if it were true, she wouldn't give up and run back home. Meanwhile, Claire asks Hayato if he has better control of his variant now, and he says he hasn't had any problems so far, but it hasn't activated in real combat since the Zwei Islands incident. She asks how the variant feels, and he explains that it's like time moves slowly and your senses are far away from you. Claire says Liza must have experienced it too, but she reveals that Liza was a different kind of variant. The savage fluid was injected into a fertilized egg, and she was born a variant. Hayato asks if Vitaly was responsible for that too, but Claire reveals that Vitaly was just an assistant and the person in charge was her mother, Linus. Apparently, Linus believed it was to beat the gods and warm, whatever that means. Liza eventually exhibited extraordinary talent as a slayer, but one day, she released a strange power to save Claire from a savage. Ever since then, she's been sleeping like she was in the pod, yet her body is still releasing enough energy to power Little Garden, which makes her Juder's trump card. Claire confesses that the reason she's captain of Little Garden is so she can keep an eye on Juder's actions and look out for her little sister, even though it seems selfish since it's all about her family. She then asks if he thinks that makes her a failure as a captain, but Hayato disagrees and says he's exactly the same as her and is only a slayer because his sister needed treatment. He believes most people fight for similar reasons, not just the generic bullshit about world peace and other pageant answers. His answer impresses Claire, but he suddenly receives an emergency call, so she rushes out of the water to listen but suddenly slips and lands in workout position with Hayato, whose hands are the luckiest in the world. Claire jumps back and accuses him of seeing her assets and holding them tight, so he blocks his face and hands her suit while she swears to make him take responsibility for that. Hayato returns the emergency call and speaks to another slayer who says Squad D has been wiped out by the hunters who are going after all the squads. Claire figures it's the same ones from Zwei Islands and they're probably jamming communications, so Hayato suggests that they head back to camp to check on the others. Suddenly, they see a red flare go up and recognize it as Fritz's, so Claire tells Hayato to head back to camp and alert the others while she goes to help Fritz's squad. Hayato worries about her being alone, but she reminds him that she's council president and it's her job. Meanwhile, Fritz gets knocked out by one of the hunters, leaving only Liddy, who promises not to go down before reinforcements come. However, the guy tells her she's kidding herself and instantly turns on variant mode to attack, but she manages to hold him off. Unfortunately, he tosses her aside and says it's over, and he'll be taking her 102. Just before he can touch her, a beam from above forces him back and reveals Claire standing above them in her full-body armament. Even the hunters know who she is and she considers it an honor, but she asks them to tell her all they know about Vitaly, offering them safety if they cooperate. One of the variants tries to attack, but she blasts her away instantly and assures them resistance is futile even with their variant powers. However, dark clouds emerge and it starts to rain, spelling bad luck for Claire's cannons. Kroven immediately signals to the girls, and they both attack using Nakri's projectiles, but instead of targeting Claire, they go after her cannons. While she tries to evade, Kroven gets close enough and knocks her to the side. Then Kroven tries to finish her off, but is stopped by Erica, who wraps her chains around him. The rest of the team shows up to help and Claire tells him to give it up and surrender, but Kroven activates his variant and breaks through the chains, saying this is just another Tuesday for them. Nesset copies their cannons and starts to shoot at them, giving Kroven an opening to attack, but Hayato jumps in and says he'll take care of it as they bump blades. Amelia faces Nakri again, but this time it doesn't take long for her to pin her weapons to the wall and ask her to surrender. However, Amelia gives her a beating that seems almost personal. Nesset sees this and begins to attack her, but Amelia manages to evade the blasts and destroy her weapons, leaving her defenseless. Nesset tries to copy Amelia's weapons, but she changes its form faster than Nesset can copy and figures she won't be able to use her powers with her eye gone. Nesset asks if she'd really take her eyes, so Amelia asks if her eyes are to hurt people or to see the beautiful world they're in. While attacking, Kroven says the only thing they've ever seen is despair and they intend to change their horrible world. His rage gets out of control and he begins to glow, allowing Hayato to see into his memories. When they were kids, they were part of a slave group that was often whipped for slowing down and given small rations to survive. One day, the three of them managed to escape from the facility, only to endure walking through the barren canyon. There, Nesset tripped and fell on a sharp rock, which caused severe damage to her eye. Somehow they came across Vitaly, who said she could stop her from losing her sight and even give them power to make them free. Back and back, Kroven refuses to back down, but Hayato hits him with another powerful strike, and he finally goes down. When he is back up, he summons his variant power and uses it to face off against Hayato, but making everyone realize they need to do something. Claire notices a bag full of hundreds below her, and Kroven says they should call a ceasefire while he takes down the savage for them, but in exchange, they'll take its core. So Lisa calculates that their greatest chance is if all the squads attack together. Claire calls out to all the squads, takes charge of the mission, and tells everyone to get ready while instructing Hayato to deliver the finishing blow. However, just as they attack, the Savage also sends an energy blast to other squads, preventing them from joining the group attack. Because of this, their plan doesn't work, and it seems like all hope is lost, but Charlotte says there's still one thing they can do. She hesitates to say it, but eventually reveals Liz's recommendation is for Hayato to share his variant powers with Claire. Amelia starts to lose it when she realizes they have to kiss, and everyone but Claudia seems to hate the idea too. Charlotte warns Claire that there's no telling what long-term effects it may have on her body, but Claire says she still has to do it so they can take out the Savage. Claire asks Hayato if he doesn't want to kiss her, and he says that's not the problem. But they get a report of another energy burst from the Savage, and even Amelia tells them to get it over with. They go off to the side, and Hayato plants a long one on Claire, causing her to feel power flowing through her body. She calls on all the squads to try the group attack once again, so everyone shoots from their squads, and Claire uses the variant's power to supercharge her attack, and it finally does the trick and breaks through. She leaves the rest of Hayato, so he deploys his full-body armament and flies toward the giant mosquito. The Savage tries to attack, but Hayato cuts through its attack and smashes its core. Afterward, they return home on a plane, leaving the rest of the mission to the other squads, so Erica asks what Jupiter is trying to pull by bringing the hunters to Little Garden, but Claire has no idea either. Later, Charlotte tells Amelia that Hayato will be fine, and when she leaves, Amelia plants another one on Sleeping Beauty. Right then, Sakura and Karen walk in and accuse her of being extra suspicious. Hayato then wakes up and everyone's relieved he's okay. Meanwhile, Billy stares at her creations and says there are no more hindrances to her plan. Weeks later, another squad faces off against a strange kind of savage without a core. Suddenly, Wendy begins to hear a sharp noise, and Billy shows up behind her and knocks her out, saying the test succeeded. Meanwhile, the gang comes back from vacation, and Hayato asks for an update on the hunters. Claire says they've been kept in their underground facility, and they'd mostly behaved, but are refusing to give up any information. In other news, Vitaly's lab was discovered, but she was long gone by then, along with any useful information that used to be there. Because of this, another joint task force will be assembled to handle security for Little Garden's school festival. Sakura says the festival's going to be great, and she'll be doing a concert with a secret weapon. Erica reports that in preparation for the event, they ordered several automatic cleaning robots, since there would be many visitors. Later, they head to the airport, where they're unfortunate enough to meet Claudia again, and she immediately flies to greet Amelia. Wendy also comes off the plane, so Risha and Fritz rush to greet her and ask about Ally, but she says she hasn't seen her since their last mission. Preparations continue for the festival, and the whole school is busy with different activities. Hayato happens to notice Sakura creeping around the hospital, so he follows her and is surprised to see her with Karen and Charlotte. He discovers Karen's planning to sing at the concert, which is the secret weapon Sakura was referring to. Karen shows him her 100, which will allow her to jump around on stage with Sakura. Hayato's surprised that she had the affinity for one, so Charlotte says their treatments ended up giving her a knack for it. Karen seems pretty excited to help people with her singing, so Hayato encourages her and tells her to keep it up. Unfortunately for him, Sakura throws him out right after, saying he'll have to wait till the concert to see her. The next day, Claire declares the school festival officially open, and hundreds of visitors pour in, giving the students plenty of guard work and chaperoning to do. Claudia is stuck on security duty at the airport, which drives her crazier than she usually is that she can't be with Amelia. Meanwhile, Medi attends to the hunters and serves lots of food from the festival. When she leaves, Croven wonders why they're being so nice to their enemies, so Makri says they must be trying to trick them since they took their hundreds. But he points out that they didn't take Nessat's since she wouldn't be able to see. Nessat thinks about Amelia's question to her, while Nakri reminds them that Vitaly says Slayers are trying to take over the world, but they're not so convinced anymore. Outside, Hayato and Amelia take a break and walk through the festival together. Amelia would glue herself to him if she could, but Hayato's scared of what people will think since she's supposed to be a meal. At that moment, they spot Risha and Erica in maids' outfits, and Erica tries to convince them it's not what they think, which only makes Amelia take a picture to have dirt on her. While Erica tries to get Amelia to delete the picture, Risha tells them they should totally stop by the cafe and signals to the rest of the maids to get their rays ready. When they enter, Hayato gets embarrassed, which makes Amelia feel jealous and wish she could dress up like a girl too. Erica hears this and decides to get her revenge, so she gets the other maids to drag her off and do their thing. Hayato whispers to Erica about people finding out she's a girl, but Erica teases him about how good she'd look in the outfit, which makes him red in the face. When they finally return, they present Amelia in all her maid glory, and Erica makes sure to show Hayato the parts of her that really jump at you. She encourages Hayato to cop a feel too, and suddenly, all the maids in the cafe tell him to feel her up. Amelia herself says she doesn't mind the slight harassment, and Hayato finally buckles under the pressure and agrees. He stretches his arm toward her, but he can't stop shaking sticking even though it's just towels under there. The girls get tired of waiting and shove him forward, causing him to land on top of her with his hand in the right spot. He gives it a couple of squeezes and even comments that they don't feel like towels, which is when Erica brings out the towels and Amelia tells him they're the real deal. Before Hayato can pretend to not enjoy the reveal, Erica takes multiple pictures of them and intends to send them to everyone. Hayato's life flashes before his eyes, but Amelia doesn't mind the rumors one bit. She even leans in for a kiss at one of the maids' request, and when Hayato asks Erica for help, she wears her uniform and goes back to work. Meanwhile, Judo arrives with a sus look in his eye, saying it's finally time. Back in the school, Hayato goes to see Karen before their big performance, and Sakura and Sofa walk in to discuss the plan for the performance. Suddenly, Judo shows up and tells Sakura it's an honor to have her sing at the little garden. Then he looks to Karen, wishes her luck too, and leaves. After the concert begins as Sakura deploys her 100 and starts to give her usual dazzling performance. During that time, Wendy switches out with one of the other guards and lets Vitali in. After, she escorts Vitali to a door, and once she gains access, she says she's done with Wendy and leaves her unconscious. Back at the concert, Sakura finishes her performance and invites Karen to the stage as the special guest. Karen's initially nervous at first, but she's able to calm down and tell everyone that her dream is to sing for people who are sick like her. She then activates her 100, which releases giant cards that combine with her to allow her to stand. She starts her song and everyone loves it, but while they're focused on the concert, Vitali's loose in the city littering. After Karen finishes her song, the crowd goes wild, and Amelia says she was amazing. Sakura joins her on stage and says they'll both be singing now, and they start another round while Judo smiles suspiciously. Meanwhile, Claire gets a report of a security officer found unconscious at the staff gate, so she looks closer and sees that it's Wendy. The officer with her says she's lost her memories, but keeps saying something about a savage without a core. Claire has no idea what that means, so she tells someone to send for Charlotte immediately. While the rest of the festival goes off without a hitch, Vitali watches from above and says it's almost time, while one of the automatic cleaning robots begins to beep repeatedly. Suddenly, a group of students find a mechanical bee, so Risha and Erica figure that can't just let it sit there, and Erica activates her 100. She grabs it with her chains, but it self-destructs while Risha points out another one. This time she powers up her 100 and punches it, causing it to explode just like the first one while the people cheer them on. However, a series of explosions start going off around the area, so they decide to find the rest before they explode and leave the civilians to their classmates. All hell breaks loose at HQ as they struggle to maintain power in some areas, so they figure the bees must be targeting the relays. Lydia instructs the security teams to destroy the bees while she heads out too, and Claire wonders where on earth they could have come from. At that moment, she gets a report of a video with one of the automatic cleaning robots transforming into a bee. Claire immediately orders them to shut down all of the robots and destroy the ones still operating, while Erica sends a report of finding variable stones within the bees. At this point, Claire is sure there's only one person who could possibly be behind the attack, which is Vitali. Claire tells Chris to announce the festival being put on hold, then sends some other students to help with the bee situation. Back at the concert, Hayato and Amelia see the notice while Sakura receives word of the emergency and announces the news while trying to keep the crowd calm. Back at HQ, Claire sees a video of Vitali using Wendy to gain access inside, and Charlotte tells her that she's probably the one that sent the rigged cleaning robots. Claire figures Vitali's taken her brother's invitation, so she calls Hayato and Amelia for backup. Outside, Erica and Ryushik continue to take care of the bees alongside other students and slayers that are lending a hand. Somewhere inside, a bee infects their command center, which turns everything red. Meanwhile, at the airport, the officers have no idea what's going on when they spot some unidentified aircrafts coming their way. Before they can do anything, the planes crash into the port deck and rear deck, while HQ discovers that part of their radar has been blanked. At the decks, several savages without cores emerge, but it turns out that conventional weapons have no effect on them. The airport squad begins to attack, but when that doesn't work, they try to defend as best as they can. Charlotte calls them replicants since Vitali made them in the image of the real savages, which explains the stolen stones and cores she collected. Claire quickly orders Liddy to take care of the replicants coming from the deck, while Erica focuses on destroying the bees as fast as possible. At that moment, Hayato and Amelia appear, and Claire explains that Vitali has infiltrated the ship, so she wants them to join security for the hunters. However, before they can leave, they get another alert of an unidentified plane which crashes on top of the school's energy barrier. Sakura and Karen try to do crowd control, assuring them that the Slayers will keep them safe. HQ assesses the damage and finds that large replicants are crawling all over the barrier and trying to take it down from the outside. At this rate, Claire says she's got to go out there herself, and she's the only one that can handle them. She tries to leave Chris in charge, but he insists that she has to stay in command, so she can rally the Slayers and calm their nerves. Hayato says they'll go instead, and Lisa backs them up too, so Claire agrees and lets them handle it, while Charlotte tells Claire that Maddie will take care of the hunters. Meanwhile, the hunters can hear all the commotion, so Nakri says Vitaly must have come to save them. But when Nesset points out that they're having a festival, Kroven says Vitaly wouldn't hurt civilians. However, Vitaly walks in and tells them she's attacking Little Garden and hands them their hundreds and says she needs their help. Kroven asks why she's attacking, since that wasn't the plan, then insists that he won't help her hurt innocent people. He even adds that the people at Little Garden aren't all that bad, so Vitaly resorts to force and pulls out a device that sends a noise to their heads. Meanwhile, Liddy does a good job cleaning through the replicants, while instructing the others not to let them get near the ship. The replicants on the barrier continue to reduce its power, causing even Karen to become worried. But Sakura remains strong and says Hayato will definitely solve the problem. Just like she said, Hayato and Amelia show up on the barrier, which has less than 40% strength left, but they're determined to protect Little Garden no matter what. Back in the security chambers, Maddie rushes to the hunter's room, but Vitaly emerges with a gun pointed at her and tries to take her out. But Maddie dodges and tackles her to the ground. Maddie turns her back on her to make sure the hunters are okay, but Vitaly shoots her down and says she's a mere robot that Linus made. While she's down, Vitaly calls the hunters to go with her, and when Maddie tries to call out to them, Kroven blasts her back and they end up going with Vitaly. Kroven breaks through the walls to create a shortcut, while HT gets an alert that they're on their way to Sector 11, which is where Lizette is. At that moment, Claire gets a call from Juder, who tells her to leave Vitaly to him since they know each other well. Claire tries to object, but he tells her to trust in him and hangs up the call. Meanwhile, Hayato and Amelia continue to take out the replicants, which is tougher than they thought since they don't have specific weak points. Back in the facility, Vitaly uses Nakri to disarm a security system, which makes Nesset and Kroven angry, so she turns up her control device and tells them to submit. Just then, Maddie returns and shoots the device out of her hands, and they both have a shootout that results in Maddie getting hit again, while Vitaly makes a run for it. After, Maddie asks if the kids are okay, and when Kroven sees the hole in her leg, he asks if she's okay, but she tells them not to worry as she'll get help down there right away. Vitaly finally makes it into the chamber with Liza and feels satisfied with herself. However, Judo emerges from behind the pod, which means he knew she'd come down there. He points out that she probably guessed he'd be there too, so she pulls her gun on him and tells him that he saved her the trouble of finding him. She then tells him she'll have her revenge for him, pretending to love her only to use her and dump her. So she plans to destroy Liza and sink the Little Garden. As she speaks, the replicants bring out devices that send sharp noises that affect Hayato, Amelia, and even Claire. The rest of HQ reports that the sound waves are only targeting Slayers and all over Little Garden. The Slayers are all being tormented by the noise from the robots. Back at the chamber, Judah remains calm and even commends Vitaly on how impressive she is, still attempting to sweet-talk her while she holds a gun. Vitaly refuses to fall for his ruse a second time and insists that she'll push him to despair, so she fires at Liz's pod, but the bullets don't seem to get through. She continues to shoot over and over again till she notices that Liz is awake and almost pisses herself wondering how. Judah tells her that Liz reacted to Sakura's songs and reveals that he's been using Vitaly this whole time. Vitaly realizes that he even put the Little Garden in danger for his plans, and he admits that he had no other reason to see her. This angers her, but when she tries to shoot, Liza forms a barrier around him that stops any of the bullets from getting through. Once she's done with her futile attempt, Judah casually puts a bullet in her and she falls to the ground. In her last moment, he holds her and thanks her for helping him further his plans, and she admits that she hates herself for still falling for his cheesy lines while she's dying. After, Judah apologizes for waking Liza and tells her she can go back to resting till the right time comes, but Liza says there's something she has to do. Outside, Amelia and Hayato struggle to put up a fight despite the intense noise. Hayato tries to stop the Trent-class replicant, but gets pushed aside easily. At the concert, Karen and Sakura also endure the noise, and Sakura wishes she had the power to save everyone. So Blizzard appears and tells her she does. She explains that her song has the power to drive the noise away, and says she should sing for Little Garden. Before she leaves, Liza kisses Karen on the head and tells her she'll now be able to stand. So the two of them power up their hundreds and begin to sing. While they sing, the Slayers begin to feel their strength returning, and Claire realizes that the girls singing is canceling out the noise, which is their own power. Hayato hears the song too and is able to get up and activate his variant. He deploys his full body armament and uses his full power to charge at the replicant and destroy it along with a part of the barrier while he collapses. Karen asks what's happened to him, so an analyst reports that he's at 0% energy, but there's no danger to his life. Claire relaxes too soon as they get a report of the Trenta-class replicant still being active. and is about to fire an attack. However, when it does, the hunters show up and stop it, though they're clearly exhausted. The replicant attacks and Nekri is unable to get out of the way, so Kroven tells Neset to take care of her while he uses his variant to attack. However, even his variant power is not enough to do damage as he soon gets electrocuted and tossed aside. Seeing this, Claire decides she's spent enough time on the sidelines and rushes to help. But before she can, Neset desperately thinks of a way to save her family and begins to overflow with her variant powers. She copies the replicant and becomes one herself. Then she takes out the robot, but goes berserk after and attacks Claire. Charlotte sees this and radios in to warn Claire that Neset's in the same state as Lizzo was when she lost control, which means she'll lose control and cause an explosion. Claire asks if there's any way to stop it, and Charlotte suggests stopping her vitals. Meanwhile, Liza talks to Hayato and tells him that he might be able to save Neset. Then she begs him to save everyone and kisses him for some reason. Meanwhile, Claire feels bad about having to end Neset, but she recognizes her duty as commander of Little Garden and prepares to fire. However, Hayato stops her and asks for time to save Neset, so Claire agrees but tells him that she'll end it when she has to. Hayato thanks her, then powers up his 100 and jumps down. He calls out to Neset, but this only causes her to attack, so Emilia comes to his rescue and blocks it, then tells him to do his thing. They have only 3 minutes left till Neset blows up, so Hayato puts some juice behind that talk no jutsu, but somehow it only makes things worse and accelerates the explosion. Claire tells him he's out of time, so he rushes forward and hits her on the head, which someone links into her mind and gets him to talk to her directly. There, he deploys an even more powerful weapon than talking jutsu and saves her through the power of friendship. After the chaos, Emilia runs to hug him while Kroven and Nekri walk up and thank him. Claire looks down at all of them and Lizzo appears and thanks her for protecting Little Garden, making her tear up. That night, they celebrate with fireworks, so Emilia kisses Hayato and tells him she always wants to be with him. Finally, he confesses he wants to be with her too and kisses her back. At that moment, the rest of the group comes out and sees them kissing, finally confirming the rumors, but Claudia comes out of nowhere and gives him hell for kissing the princess. When everyone hears this, Emilia finally comes clean about being a girl and a princess. Unfortunately, that's not enough to save her from Claire's wrath, as she points her most powerful weapon and blasts them into the next season. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.